Hey guys, welcome back to the Laid-Back Homestead. I'm Crystal, and today we're actually going to be in the kitchen preserving our harvest. So if you're looking for 3 easy recipes to help you preserve your end of season vegetables and herbs, no canning required, no dehydrator required, you're gonna want to stick around and see what we make. All right guys, I'm in the kitchen and I've got some fresh basil here. We've got a little bit of parsley down here for a recipe I'm gonna be making. Got a couple peppers and our kukuza squash, or as my family called it, gugutsa. And if you don't have this variety of squash, it does not matter. Any squash you have coming in right now will work for the recipes that I'm going to show you. So first things first, I got to get this all washed and then I will jump right on into the recipes. So for our first recipe, it's kind of like a squash stuffing, or like a rice stuffing that has the squash incorporated. So you obviously are going to need squash. You're going to need some celery, an onion, some bell pepper, a little bit of parsley, a little bit of garlic. You'll also need some ground pork sausage, some Tasso, Cajun seasoning of your choice, or any seasoning of your choice, and some chopped pecans. So the first thing I need to do is get this cut up. I'm only going to be using part of the squash for this recipe, so let me get that going. I almost forgot to mention, you're also going to need rice for this recipe as well. As you can see, I have my rice cooker going. So now all I got to do is chop up the vegetables. I went ahead and pulled out my chopper just to get everything done in a faster manner since I have several things going on today. Now for this recipe, I'm only going to use the fatter half of this squash. Now that I have it cut, you're going to want to peel it if you're using this squash. If you're using, a summer squash, you won't need to do this. Okay, so real life, I'm not gonna hide anything. I attempted to peel this, and you can, but I realize I'm all about working smarter, not harder. And this is gonna take forever for me to peel. And especially if you have, pain in your hands, this is not something you're gonna wanna really take on. So what I'm gonna do instead, I'm actually cutting it like that in half, and I'm gonna scoop out these seeds. The flesh is actually quite soft, okay? It really is, it's quite soft. And I'm gonna just scoop out these seeds and then I'll put them on my roasting pan and we'll roast them as is. So you just take it, and because it really is soft in the middle, it really doesn't take a whole lot of effort to cut it in half. Just be careful with anything. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and scoop out all those seeds because nobody's going to want to eat that. And all you need is just a spoon. Let's see if I can do it here for y'all. Just a spoon. Like I said, the inside's soft. The inside's not a problem, and you can get all of that out relatively easily. If you want to save your seeds, this guy's pretty mature. I could easily save these seeds for next year. If you've been watching any of my other gardening videos, this was a volunteer plant. I did not even plant this, so not intentionally at least. If you harvest them when they're younger, the seeds are not obviously as big, and you can treat this like a summer squash if you wanted to do, something in place of zucchini or yellow squash. And there we go. I'm just going to do that with the rest of them, and then I'll show y'all what I'm going to do to roast them. I don't know if y'all can see just how many seeds that is, but that is a whole lot of volunteer gugutsa if I go throw those out in the yard. So to prepare this for the oven, I'm going to hit it with a little olive oil, and I'm just going to rub that in with my hand, nothing too fancy. Rub that all in right there. And then I'm just going to hit them with a little bit of the Creole seasoning personally. It's kind of just an overall seasoning blend. Now you're gonna roast these until tender, about 30 minutes, I'd say. You can check them. You are gonna roast them cut side down. And my oven was preheated to 350. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna spritz this side too. Not that we're gonna be using the skin, but just for some extra flavor. Now, if you were doing this recipe with just a zucchini from the farmer's market or yellow squash, you do not have to do this step. But because mine has been on the vine a little bit long, got a little busy with life, I got to treat it more like a winter squash than a summer squash for these recipes. Now that we have our squash roasting, I'm going to go ahead and just cut up this tasso and get this cooking down in the pan along with our sausage. And this is the first time I've ever made it with the tasso. I've made something similar to this recipe that just used the sausage, but I thought, you know what, let's experiment. Let's try something a little bit different, something out of my comfort zone. I mean, pretty sure it's just like smoked pork. I can't imagine how that would make anything in life worse. But as always, use what you have or whatever you're comfortable with when it comes to stuff like this. In fact, you really could even just make it with bacon. I mean, that would have been good too. But like I said, I wanted to step out of my comfort zone a little bit. All right, so in a large skillet, I'm going to go ahead and cook up or brown up our meat and get this tasso cooking down. Okay, so now that my sausage is almost cooked through, I made a hole right here in the middle, and I'm just going to go ahead and start cooking down my vegetables. At this point, I'm going to go ahead, I kind of just stirred it all together. I'm going to add in some of the Cajun seasoning, and I'm also going to add in a little bit of garlic powder. That wasn't on the original ingredient list, but since I'm adding garlic, I like to add garlic powder. And I'm going to add in a little bit of garlic. And I don't know if I mentioned it, I will have a recipe linked below that's very similar to what I'm doing. I kind of just took their recipe and their ingredients and I'm adapting it into a casserole. Okay, I'm just going to put a lid on this and let it simmer until my other squash is finished roasting. And then I'm going to spoon that into here. And then we'll add in our rice and our chopped pecans, and this will be ready for its final bake. Alrighty, I just pulled our squash out of the oven and she is nice and tender. So as soon as this becomes cool enough for me to mess with, I'm going to scoop that out and put that into our pan. All right, this has been simmering away. We're going to go ahead and add in our parsley, and then I'm going to come in with our rice. In the original recipe, and I apologize, I forgot to mention, it calls for a half a cup of chicken broth. I'm going to add a splash since I'm doing more of a casserole and just see what we need from there. Okay, and now we're just going to stir this to combine it. And the last thing I'm going to add in is going to be the roasted squash. And if it sounds like my voice is going in and out, I apologize. I am getting over a touch of something. Don't quite know what it was. Had a crummy few days. But here we are, back in the kitchen. Alrighty. So what I like to do, since it's not super cool yet, I kind of just come through with a knife and we'll score it where I want to put my spoon. But I'm also doing this so I can kind of pre-cut it into chunks. So I'm just going around almost like you would an avocado. I'm just scoring it. And just kind of, because like I said, I want it to be cubed once I scoop it out. And it's not super mushy. If you wanted it mushier, you should roast it longer. I mean, that's all you would really do. And then once I get my knife, kind of the cuts that I want, I just kind of come through with my spoon and just start scooping it out. Now that we've got all of our squash, I'm gonna go ahead and put that in here. I'm going to stir it around to incorporate it. And I'm evaluating whether I want to add a little bit more chicken broth. If you are going to put something like this up in your freezer as like a freezer meal, stop here, put it into whatever pan you want to freeze it in, and put it in your freezer. Now, since this is a new to me recipe and I'm making it so I can taste test it, I'm going to bake it right now. And since I'm baking it right now, I think I am going to add a splash more of the chicken stock, just so it doesn't dry out on me. The last thing I'm going to add, actually, I'm going to check this for seasonings real quick. I always recommend checking for seasonings just to make sure it's really good. Now, go in with your pecans, give it one big mix, and I'm going to get it into a baking dish. All right, I've got just a regular old 9x13 here, and I'm just giving it a little spritz. Don't know if that's necessary, but why risk it after we've come this far? And I'm going to pour my stuff and mixture into my 9x13 or any casserole dish you like. Again, like I said, if you are going to freeze this, this is when I would stop where we are, let it cool completely, cover it, and get it in your freezer. Now for its final bake, I am going to cover this and bake it, 15, 20 minutes, and then take the cover off and bake it maybe another 15, 20 minutes just so the top can get a little crispy. Like I said, if you're putting this up in your freezer, pre-baked, this is dinner number one complete. And honestly, this made so much, you could easily split this up into 2 8x8 pans and have 2 dinners or 2 side dishes, depending on how you look at it. So this recipe actually made a significant amount of food. So now we're going to move on to recipe number 2, or the second way to preserve your harvest. All right, y'all. Recipe number 2 is beer bread. Now, I know what you're thinking. Haven't you made beer bread before? I have. But this is a great way to use up any herbs you have outside in your yard. This is a hearty bread. The version I do only requires 4 ingredients because I use self-rising flour. If you use self-rising flour, you only need flour, sugar, you do need beer, and you do need some melted butter. Now, the original recipe does call for a 1/2 cup, but you can use 1/4 cup. That's what I'm going to do just to cut down on, the calories in it. This bread freezes beautifully. That's why I consider it a way to preserve your harvest. You can also add in like shredded cheese. If you want to add in shredded cheese, you can do that. For today, since I have so much basil, I'm actually going to chop my basil in my food processor and add that into our batter. And I will show you what that looks like. I washed the basil that I'm going to be using for this next recipe in just a little bit of water and a splash of apple cider vinegar, just to make sure we don't have any creepy crawlies. So there we have it, my chopped up herbs. You can shred this up as much as you like. Also, I wanted to take a second to just offer, if you're looking for other ways to preserve herbs that do not require a dehydrator, I have several videos I've already done on different ways that I preserve my herbs, especially utilizing my freezer. So I'm going to link my playlist. It's the In the Kitchen playlist down below. So you can check out those other things, those other videos. If you are looking for inspiration on other ways you can go ahead and get your fresh herbs stored for the winter. If you are using all-purpose flour, You will also need a pinch of salt and some baking powder, and you will need to sift your flour. This is why I highly recommend using self-rising flour if you can get it, because you do not need to sift it. At least in my opinion, I've made this bread 100 times. You do not need to sift it if you're using the self-rising flour. So in a bowl, I'm just going to add 3 cups of our self-rising flour. You do not really need to sift this. And obviously, for a baked good, you can get away with a little wiggle room. This is not one of those things you need to measure out with a scale or anything like that. It cooks up fine. I've done this so many times. If there was a way for me to screw it up, I would have done it by now. Now, to our flour, you're going to add 1/4 cup of sugar. All right, we got our flour, our sugar. I'm going to come in with our basil. And I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm using, I think it's the purple basil variety. So now that I've got this in here, I may give this a little coat just to separate it up a little bit. And all we're going to do is pour in our beer. Now you need 12 ounces of beer. Any beer will do. This acts as your leavening agent. Start with a spoon if that makes you feel more refined, but it will get to be a little bit tricky with a spoon, at least for me. Once it starts to pull together, I'm just going to come in with my hands to make sure it's all fully incorporated. And we're going to just pour this out into a regular old loaf pan, greased loaf pan. You want to make sure it's greased. It already smells good. It's not even cooking yet. See, it's about this point where my wrist starts to want to give up on all of that. And I just want to go in with my hand. Handle my business. Now, my hands are clean. I've been cleaning my hands a lot during this process. I know I don't show that in the videos, but I'm hoping everyone believes me. Now you can see our dough. It's just incorporated enough. And I have my greased loaf pan, and I'm just going to plop it out in there. And then you shape it however you want. I mean, I don't go crazy with it because nobody in my family really cares, but you shape it how you want it to be. It's a little bit of a sticky dough, as you can see. All I look for is just to make sure it's kind of evenish, just so it'll help cook evenly. All that's left to do is to take your butter, whatever amount you're using, and you just pour it all on top, just like that. And then we're going to pop this in our oven. We're going to bake it at 375. The recipe calls for an hour. My oven bakes a little hot, so I'm going to actually check mine at 50 minutes. Our bread is baking, casserole is baking, and now we're going to move on to recipe number 3, which is just an old-fashioned squash and onions, or a smothered squash and onions. I'm actually going to be cooking up some bacon and smothering the squash and onions down in the bacon. So this is just one of those old-fashioned classics, but it does freeze. I have stored leftovers in the freezer. So this is just one of those things where if you need a quick meal, you know, this is one of the ways to go. So let me show you what you'll need. So this recipe traditionally is made with a yellow squash. As I mentioned earlier, I'm using the good because that's what I have, and I'm trying to use up my harvest. But by all means, if you have an abundance of zucchini, use zucchini. If you've got yellow squash, use yellow squash. Use what you have coming in out of your yard or farmer's market. Again, when it comes to the bacon, this is one of those family recipes. You make it as hearty as you want. If you want half a pack of bacon, put half. If you want the whole thing, put the whole thing. No one's going to judge you. Same thing goes, you just need an onion. I would have preferred a larger onion. However, I just realized I'm out of onions. So I'm going to use what I have, and we will get on with it. Now, if you are using a gugutsa and it has been a hot minute that it sat on the vine, meaning it's got this really hard skin, you have a couple of options. You can slice it in half like I did here, or you can cut it as long as it fits on a microwave safe plate. and you can put some knife marks in it to let the steam out, and then microwave it until it gets tender enough for you to be able to peel it. So this is a personal preference. If you want to roast it in the oven like I did earlier, by all means do that. I am just trying to show you all the ways you can utilize this squash. And sometimes you just don't have time for the oven. So I'm going to pop this in my microwave. I suggest always starting at 2-minute increments and only go as long as you need until it's soft enough for you to handle. Because depending on when you harvest something like this, it's going to determine how long it's going to need in the microwave. I'm sorry. Well, in the oven too. But in this instance, we're talking about the microwave. So you just want to get it till you can at least peel it safely. And I'm going to go ahead and pop this in and get that going while I chop up my bacon. All right, so when it comes to the bacon, like I said, you get to decide this for you and whatever you think your family is going to prefer. I'm going to go ahead and just use the whole pack of bacon. And then for me, this is a personal preference. You just chop it up the size you want. Again, however you want to do this. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I am using different cutting boards, okay, for my produce versus my meat. I just want to state that because I don't know if that's really apparent in the video, but I am using 2 different cutting boards and 2 sets of knives. And there's the microwave. And that way I can flow throughout my kitchen on days like this, or any days where I'm doing, batch cooking or anything like that for my freezer preservation or my freezer meal videos. I'm just trying to flow as quickly as possible. And then I'll only have one set of, well, I'll say one set, one dishwasher load of dishes to do at the end of it. And I'll end up with several food options. And yes, I am using the same pan from earlier because, again, no need to dirty up your entire kitchen and everything you own on days like this. Right, our bacon is rendering, and I'm just going to get our onion nice and diced up, and then we'll just waiting on our squash to finish in the microwave. Now the squash, like I said, 2-minute increments. It may very well not be done at the 2-minute mark, so pop that in first and start checking it, every 2 minutes to see if it's tender enough for you to handle. Okay, y'all, so I got my squash out of the microwave, and I'm a little bit pressed for time. So if you're finding that your peeler, which mine's not very sharp, is not cutting it, what you can do, now please don't burn yourself. Wait for it to cool if you can. But since I'm kind of in a rush, I'm going to just go ahead and prop it up, take my knife, and peel it down the old-fashioned way, getting all of that firm skin off. You see, and like when I press it, it's nice and fleshy. It's actually not, this piece is not super hot. The one I did right before it was a wee bit warmer. If it is too hot, or if it starts to get kind of hard to hold, safety first, I use a clean paper towel to kind of get a grip on it. And we'll finish it up that way. Got one piece left, and then I'm just going to dice the flesh. As you can see here, I've already diced. If there's any seeds, the smaller part of the neck did not have any seeds. As you can see here, we have a few here. We are just going to scrape those out. Nobody wants to eat that. Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. I am familiar with smothering down green beans. So you just cook your bacon for a while and then add in all your juices and your beans and stuff. And, it cooks for a while and your bacon doesn't stay crispy. Now, if that's not what you want, if you want your bacon to be crispy and more of like a topping or a garnishment, what you would do is you would fry this up to whatever crunchy texture you're looking for. Once it gets to where you want it, you would remove it with a slotted spoon onto a plate, cook down your onion and your squash, whatever variety you're using. in the grease and then just add your topping back on afterwards. Because I'm doing this more of like side dish, kind of like I do my green beans, I'm going to let this render down just a little bit more, and then I'm just going to add everything in, put the lid on it, and let it simmer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my onion slices. I kind of made a little hole in the middle. You can add this in, let all that start cooking down. Just kind of separating it out a little bit. And then I'm going to come in with my squash. The squash will not need long to cook. It's already, because I had to put it in the microwave, it's already got a little bit of a cook on it. All right, now I'm just going to mix all of this in to incorporate it. If I was using the whole good stuff for this one recipe, there would obviously be a lot more squash to bacon ratio. And if I had a larger onion, you know, same thing. Right now, this is looking more like a bacon dish with squash rather than a squash dish with bacon. But this is the Laid-Back Homestead, and we are winging it. Alrighty, the bread just beeped at after 50 minutes, 50. I'm going to take the internal temp. Because I'm kind of a nerd about things like baked goods, if I take the time to bake it, I don't want it to fall apart on the inside when I cut it. And this type of bread needs to hit between 200 and 210 degrees. It is going to stay in here until it is cool enough to be flipped onto a wire rack. Now, if you want to make multiple loaves of this in a day, and or you just want to make one loaf and put it in the freezer, however you want to do it, what you would do once this is completely cooled, I mean completely cooled on your wire rack, you would wrap it 2 times in saran wrap and then 2 times in foil. Write on your foil what it is and then freeze it. And of course, I did this with basil real quick. You could do it with any herbs you have growing, any combination, whatever you want it to be, okay? So really, it's just an easy way to get things in your freezer. The other thing you could do, if you want, is to let it cool completely and then slice it and freeze it and use individual slices and just, you know, thaw them or pop them in the toaster or toaster oven, whatever you have. So here we have everything completed. We have our stuffing or our casserole, our smothered squash, as well as our bread. Everything was delicious. My boys gave it the seal of approval to make again. So I will definitely be adding these into our regular rotation. Okay, y'all, everything tasted amazing, as I knew it would. I hope these meals inspire you to either grow something out of your comfort zone or to cook something out of your comfort zone. And I still have a ton of herbs left over. And if you are looking for kind of the non-traditional way of preserving your harvest, you know, not using a dehydrator, not canning, I really do encourage you to check out my playlist in the kitchen, because I have several videos already up showcasing different ways to preserve your tomatoes, your peppers, your herbs, in all different kinds of ways. And I'm constantly coming up with new ways to do that. And so if you are into that type of content or you find this video helpful, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe. My whole goal with this channel is to encourage you and to help you grow as much food as possible in your own yard, however big or small that is, and to show you what to do with it, because sometimes we grow it and then it becomes really overwhelming and we don't always know what to do with it, myself included. That's really what inspired part of this YouTube journey. So thank you all for hanging out with me, and until next time, stay blessed.